In the near future, mass unemployment, homelessness, and civil unrest drive Los Angeles into a crime epidemic. Since prisons are overcrowded, red zones are established to restrict violent criminals. However, hundreds of police officers are still killed every day in the line of duty. The government forms the Mercy Court, which uses artificial intelligence as judges, jury, and executioner. This reduces the need for lengthy trials, and suspects are judged merely a few hours after their crimes. The AI always assumes that the suspects are guilty unless proven innocent. After 2 years, this program has executed 18 people and cut crime by 68%, saving billions of tax dollars and helping people feel safe again. In a courtroom, Detective Chris wakes up strapped to a chair with a video promoting the Mercy program playing in the screen in front of him. Suddenly, AI Judge Maddox appears on the screen and announces that the trial can now begin since Chris's alcohol level is finally down. She tells him he was unconscious for almost 6 hours and asks him to swear an oath to tell the truth. After Chris does so, Maddox reveals that he's being charged with the murder of his wife. Bodycam footage shows a team of cops entering Chris's house. They find his wife Nicole bleeding on the floor and their daughter Britt crying next to her. Nicole has been stabbed, and when the cops ask her who did it, she answers Chris's name. He watches the video in horror and freaks out when he hears his name. Maddox mentions that Chris had been alone in the house with Nicole at the time of her stabbing. Since he thinks she's lying, Chris searches the internet and confirms that his name is all over the news. They talk about his arrest and his support of the Mercy program. Chris and his partner Jack caught murderer David, who was the first criminal on the Mercy trial. Then Maddox asks him to plead, so Chris says he's not guilty. However, she's analyzed the evidence to conclude that his guilt probability is 97.5%. He must lower it to 92% to avoid execution, and he has 90 minutes to defend himself. He can use all the information in the Los Angeles Municipal Cloud, the database to which every person and company connects their devices as mandated by law. If he loses, the chair will kill him with a sonic pulse. As a timer appears on the screen, Maddox starts going through the evidence. Chris arrived at work at 8:51, but he never left his vehicle. Instead, he went home. Nicole refused to open the door for him and said he could talk to her through a lawyer. A frustrated Chris punched the camera before opening the door with his own keys. Nicole tried to kick him out before the door closed. Maddox fast-forwards the footage, explaining that Chris was in the house for 26 minutes. Shortly after he left, Britt came home from a sleepover and screamed. The investigation indicates that Nicole had been stabbed by a right-handed man and that a single wound was enough to chip her spine and pierce her liver. Fresh traces of Nicole's blood have been found in Chris's clothes. After leaving the house, Chris went to the bar to drink, which he tries to deny. Footage from the bar's security camera shows a very drunk Chris fighting the cops when they try to arrest him and even getting tased. That didn't stop Chris from running out of the building and trying to take a random civilian's car, but the cops jumped on him and knocked him out. Chris doesn't remember any of this and Maddox blames it on the alcohol. He wants to talk to Britt, but the trial only allows calling witnesses and juveniles are excluded. For now, she's staying with her maternal grandparents. However, rules also say that if the deceased was known to a person, they can send a message to ask for a call in times of grieving. Chris tries a few different words, but he doesn't know what to say, so he lets Maddox send Britt the automatic message. Rules also say that the criminal can speak to their sponsor. A video from Rob from Alcoholics Anonymous appears on the screen scolding Chris for not calling him when he had the urge to drink. Rob worked with Nicole and he called the police when she didn't show up for her shift. When the video ends, Maddox goes over the couple's profile. Chris and Nicole started dating 20 years ago and got married after 3 years. A year later, Britt was born. Their lives were happy until Chris lost his partner Ray in the line of duty, which pushed him back into alcoholism. This slowly tore the family apart and Nicole started to consider getting a divorce. Her messages to her family and friends indicate that Chris has lost his temper 57 times in the last 6 months. Another video shows Britt talking to a guy that Chris doesn't recognize. It turns out Britt has secret social media accounts where she posts her party outfits. She tells her friend that her mother is crying and that her father often gets aggressive. At that moment, Britt calls Chris and has a breakdown, so he assures her that he didn't kill Nicole and that he's been arrested by mistake. Unfortunately, Britt's grandfather forces her to hang up. Maddox reminds Chris that he only has 1 hour and 8 minutes left. Chris calls Jack, who is still working on Nicole's crime scene. Chris checks all the case files on the screen before telling Jack to show him around the house. A reconstruction of the crime scene appears on top of Jack's tour. In the living room, there's a broken vase on the floor that may have been defensive. In the kitchen, they've found Britt's bloody footprints and bloodstains on the wall, indicating a struggle. A broken plate shows that Nicole tried to defend herself, and there's a knife missing from a set that matches the stabbing weapon. Chris's fingerprints are on it, but he clarifies that he used it to cook. They've also found fibers, hair, skin, and DNA that match Chris. Next, Chris checks Nicole's phone record since he remembers seeing her texting after their fight. There are no text or calls that match that time, so Chris asks about her work phone. Maddox didn't know that there's a second phone, so she gets the number from Chris's call records and calls it. In the house, Jack hears ringing and follows it to a car outside. She breaks the window and retrieves Nicole's phone, only to discover it's a black market unit that isn't registered to the municipal cloud. The only calls and texts on it were sent to another black market unit. Maddox calls the mysterious number and the person hangs up when they hear her voice. This is still enough to track the location, so Jack heads there on her flying bike. While they wait, Maddox realizes that Chris already knew that Nicole was keeping secrets and informs him that his guilt probability has been reduced to 0.8%. The phone is found in a hotel and is about to go out the back door. Jack rushes to block that door with two other officers as Patrick tries to escape. When he sees the cops, he runs back inside and a chase ensues. Maddox searches for his profile to learn that he's a chef who is late on his rent and has been investigated twice for Social Security fraud. The officers chase Patrick through the hotel, but he manages to lose them by taking a door to an area without cameras. Then Jack sends out a drone that finds Patrick on the roof, so the officers go after him. They manage to tackle Patrick and they fall on a lower area where they capture him. Patrick claims he didn't do anything and he ran because he was afraid they'd blame him for it anyway. Chris wonders what Nicole was doing with a guy like this, so Patrick says he gave her everything Chris couldn't. He admits he flirted with Nicole and they went out on a few dates, but it never escalated. She wanted to talk privately to him, so he acquired the burner phones. After Maddox finds footage of the dates that confirm the story, Patrick says he's been at work all day. Security cameras also confirm this, so he can't be the killer. Patrick scolds Chris for not taking care of his family, explaining that Nicole only wanted someone who would listen to her and comfort her. Jack captures him anyway for resisting the arrest. With only 53 minutes left, Chris's guilt probability has risen to 98% because he's provided a motive for murdering Nicole. Chris then reveals that today Nicole found the bottle of alcohol that he keeps hidden in his car. He's been drinking again for around a year, so Maddox searches for more footage. Some time ago, Nicole found Chris drinking in the garage and he snapped at her, finally making him see he had a problem. He started to go to AA meetings and met Rob, who helped him stay sober for a while. However, losing Ray hit him really hard. Another video shows Ray and Chris in a police car getting ready to approach a criminal in another vehicle. At that moment, Chris got a call from Nicole, so Ray told him to take it while he went out alone. Unfortunately, the criminal shot Ray and his vehicle pushed him against the police car to crush him. Chris got Ray back in the car and promised to take him to the hospital, but he was also chasing after the criminal. He pushed the guy's car with his own, causing it to flip over and crash. Unfortunately, Ray died from his wounds in the process. Chris then chased the man until he cornered him in the water to arrest him, only for the trial to find him not guilty later. This makes Chris regret not shooting him when he had the chance. Maddox isn't interested in any of this and asks Chris to try to remember his day. He explains that when he arrived at work, he discovered that his bottle wasn't in the car and knew Nicole had found it, so he went home. They ended up arguing and Chris broke the vase just because she loved it. The broken shards cut her, which is why there was a little of her blood on his clothes. He doesn't remember anything that happens afterward. Chris wonders if he did it after all, so Maddox reminds him he still has 43 minutes and all her tools at his disposal. After looking at Nicole's contacts, Chris calls Patrick in prison and asks him if Nicole had any troubles. Patrick shares that she was under a lot of stress at work because she had to spy on her coworkers after some chemicals went missing. Chris wonders if it was someone from Nicole's work, but Maddox points out they weren't seen in the neighborhood since Sunday for a barbecue. Then Chris sends Jack to Viking Shipping Depot, the company Nicole worked at. While he waits, he watches clips from the barbecue to identify Nicole's coworkers, yet Maddox says they all have an alibi for today. He makes her check his neighbor's camera, but it experienced an outage, so the footage is still being archived. Next, Chris asks for the footage of the people who came to the barbecue by car and notices that Rob's vehicle has 3 more people. Chris calls Rob and asks him who he gave rides to. Rob mentions the names and shares that none of those people left with him and nobody missed work yesterday. Getting desperate, Chris checks Britt's video from last night again and checks the timestamp. Britt's rant happened while Chris was at work, so he couldn't have made Nicole cry. Since now Britt is potentially a witness, Maddox lets him call her. Britt is now angry with Chris because she's seen the video of his arrest and realized he's been drinking behind their backs. Everyone on the internet thinks Chris is guilty and she wonders if it's true. Her grandfather wants her to hang up, however Maddox forbids it because it's part of the trial. Chris asks Britt what she heard last night, so she explains she heard Nicole cry and some weird noises around the house. A video on her socials shows her searching the house for the noises, and Chris notices that the basement door is open. They never opened that door, and Britt says she wasn't there last night. Chris asks Maddox to clear the image and he discovers a hand on the knob. One of the barbecue guests never left the party and hid in the basement for 2 days. To identify the mysterious man, they look into the servers of Nicole's company. By going through the emails, Chris learns that someone has been faking the stock records to cover up the fact that 300 kilos of chemicals have gone missing in the past 6 months. The missing chemical is urea granules, which is used for fertilizers, dermatological products, and illegal substances that are very popular in red zones. A mysterious email asks Nicole to meet at the docks, so Chris searches for the security footage of that meeting. Nicole is seen arguing with Holt, who asked her not to go to the cops and give him a few more days instead. She refused because her job was on the line, and Holt threw his things in frustration. Looking at Holt's emails, Chris discovers he's addicted to gambling. Checking his finances reveals he's drowning in debt and Rob has been bailing him out. This drops Chris's guilt probability to 94.7%. Chris then calls Rob, but it's Holt who picks up. He wishes Chris good luck and goes looking for Rob. While they wait, Maddox tries to find Holt's location at the time of the murder to no avail. Chris asks her to check his neighbor's camera again and they see something moving in the bushes, but the footage hasn't been fully uploaded yet. Soon Holt returns to the phone and says he couldn't find Rob. Chris accuses him of stealing the chemicals, so Holt reveals the truth. It was Rob who was stealing. Since Holt felt he owed Rob many favors, he tried to help him with Nicole. Now he can't find him, and a coworker says that he left in a truck. Holt also reveals that Rob didn't come to work yesterday and the last time he saw him was at the barbecue. That day Rob asked Holt to give the others a ride in his car while he stayed a little longer. Maddox tracks the missing truck and Chris sends Jack after it, remembering that Rob has a gun license. At the same time the neighbor's footage has finally finished uploading and they see Rob coming out of the neighbor's car trunk. This only drops Chris's guilt probability to 93.4, which makes him mad. He tries arguing with Maddox and the philosophical questions he asks make her glitch a few times. With only 19 minutes left, Chris contacts some friends in the force and tells them about Rob's guns. Jack and this team surround Rob's house and break in, but they don't find him anywhere. Chris notices there's no truck parked outside, making him realize that Rob took the tracker out of the truck and left it at home. Maddox searches for the truck around the city but she doesn't find its license plates, which means Rob took them off. Chris asks Jack to send an alert for a Viking shipping truck. In Rob's house, the cops find a broken picture with a hand on the torn edge. Rob was raised in a children's home and his records were lost in a data hack, so it'll take Maddox a while to find the photo online. In the garage, the cops find the chemicals and burned evidence. Tools indicate he wasn't selling the chemicals, he was cooking them to sell as illegal substances. The truck's plates are also there with a book that teaches how to use chemicals to make explosives. If Rob has made a bomb, they need clues to know who the target will be. Suddenly the cameras find the truck in the street, heading downtown very fast. At the same time Maddox finds the rest of the old picture and reveals that the other boy is David, the first criminal killed by Mercy. David and Rob were brothers, but Rob was adopted alone and his surname was changed by his new parents. Rob befriended Chris after David's death, which means it was part of his plan. Chris realizes Rob wants revenge and the bomb is coming to the courtroom. A drone then gets close enough to the truck to confirm that Rob is driving. He's speaking to someone sitting next to him but they can't see the passenger. Getting suspicious, Chris calls Britt but it's his father-in-law who answers. He says Britt went outside for fresh air. Chris checks his in-law's security camera and discovers that Ron kidnapped Britt. At that moment the cops in Rob's garage find a timer. They immediately start running and most of them manage to get out before the house blows up in a huge explosion. As many officers burn down, Chris tries to contact Jack to no avail. The garage bomb only had a small amount of the chemicals, so Maddox concludes that the bomb in the truck has the rest. That means it'll blow up the entire city. Then Jack calls Chris to confirm she's fine and agrees to go after the truck. Now Chris's guilt probability finally drops to 0. Maddox wants to stop the trial but Chris refuses because he wants to keep having access to the system to stop Rob. When Maddox points out that he only has 9 minutes left and the chair could kill him, he doesn't care because he wants to save the city. This emotional logic makes Maddox glitch, so Chris explains to her how they can work together for the greater good. Maddox agrees to continue with the trial. Police cars are now following the truck. They try to block it many times, but Rob always dodges them or pushes them. As the news starts recording the chase, Rob drives faster and hits civilian cars too. A police vehicle ends up crashing into a store. When the truck reaches the bridge, a SWAT helicopter tries to lower one of its agents. More police cars try to block the way but Rob drives through them at great speed and the agent has nowhere to land. Jack has no choice but to order her men to take Rob out, ignoring Chris when he reminds her that Britt is also in the truck. Even Maddox agrees it's the best plan. A remote control car is sent out with an explosive and passes under the truck, however the connection fails and it doesn't blow up. Chris wonders if Maddox hacked it, but she doesn't answer. With only 4 minutes left, Maddox sends an alert to evacuate the area. Chris asks Jack to fly in front of the truck and sees Britt begging for help while he tries to make Rob see reason. Furious, Rob explains that David was innocent but when he's about to say more Jack opens fire. This makes her lose control of the bike and she falls off. The truck then crashes right into the court building. At the same time the chair starts getting ready to kill. Maddox doesn't answer because the power has gone out so the system is working on a spare battery. In the lobby, Rob uses Britt as a shield while shooting all the guards who try to stop him. With only 10 seconds left, the chair begins to go down and Chris screams for help. Thankfully Maddox comes back online and stops the trial just in time. Afterward Chris takes the elevator to the lobby and grabs a vest from a dead guard. He tells Maddox to get information on David and tries to calm Rob down, but Rob pulls out the detonator. Before he can press the button, Maddox appears on a screen and gives him the chance to clear his brother's name. Rob swears he talked to David at the time of the murder, but Maddox says there was no phone on David when he was found next to the body. While Rob argues with Maddox, Britt bites his arm to free herself. Chris immediately jumps on Rob and they start fighting for the detonator. As Rob keeps firing his gun, Chris manages to pull some cables from the detonator to shut it down. Then he kicks the gun out of Rob's hand. He grabs the weapon and points it at Rob, desperate to avenge Nicole. Britt cries and begs him not to do it. As Chris hesitates, Rob insists he was on the phone with David the whole time and that he called the precinct. Suddenly Jack shoots him and Chris has to stop her from firing again to finish him. Rob says that he talked to a woman in the precinct and she promised she'd check David's call history, so whoever arrested David knew the truth. Maddox checks the precinct's calls and confirms that someone looked into Rob's history to find his call with David. Chris remembers it was Jack who arrested David and demands the truth. Jack refuses to talk, but Maddox is now checking her history. The phone had been in the evidence box but Jack took it away and threw him in the river. Then Jack admits she did it to prove to the public that mercy works and keep the city safe. Chris says that what they need is justice and tells the other officers to arrest her. Afterward Chris runs to reunite with Britt. Maddox realizes she's killed an innocent man and wonders what she's done. Chris says that like humans, AI can make mistakes and they also need to learn from them. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.